All right. So you know what a z-score is. We've got our formula. That's z is our standardized number. X is the value you want, right? The one that you're looking for, or your score, like your height, your ACT score, whatever. This is the average. And this is the standard deviation. It's a simple formula, and we're going to now look at how would someone ask a question over this. Okay, so let's look at a question. The PSAT scores are normally distributed with a mean. I left that blank so you could practice the symbols of 500 and a standard deviation of 85. So here's a question I might ask you. What proportion of students scored below 464? So one of the things we want to do as your beginning is to look at a sketch. So I know that this would be 500 because that's the mean. And then if you do the empirical rule, right, this would be 585 and this would be 415. Right? If I did one standard deviation. So now we can clearly see, where would 464 be? Somewhere in here. So we can see, if I wanted to know which proportion, meaning what percent of students score less, that's the left side. I'm going to write that down. If I'm on the left side, when I look at my chart, am I reading the positive side or the negative side? It's the negative side, right? Because it's left. So what would I do? How do I do this? I can't look up a score on my chart. I have to standardize it and look up the Z. So we're going to say what? Z equals the score I'm interested in minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So I plug that in. So plug it in, punch it in. And what would that Z score be? Now, what I did is I printed the sheet right there for you so you don't have to pull it out. Okay. All right, a Z of 0.42. Now, this is the chart you use, but I printed it here just to make it faster for you, less to look at. So I look up a Z of -42. That's this right here. So what is that? Right? So what does that mean? You looked up and you got the number 0.3372. Big deal. It is. So what you could do, and this is ask a table or calculator. I tried to spell PSAT, so picture, you draw the bell curve, standardize, meaning you work with your Z score, ask a table, look at the table. I'm going to show you the calculator next time, and then tell what happened. So I'm going to tell what happened. What does this mean? It means 33.72% of students, right, scored below 33.72%. I'm sorry, below 464 on the PSAT. Meant to write the score in there. Okay. So that percent, now remember, your chart always reads to the left. So your chart always tells you who's below that. So 33.72% of students scored below a 464. Easy enough, right? Now, how does this change on the next question? It's the same bell. So this one says how many students scored above 715. So always color what you see. It helps you know if your answer is correct or incorrect. Is this going to be a large percent or a small percent? Small. But I can't read this on my chart. It's not there. My chart only reads below. So what do I do? Yes, I figure out below and subtract from 1, right? So this is the probability, right? That Z. So let's do a Z-score. It's our calculation is the same. It's the score you're interested in minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So if you punch that in, you get 2.53, right? So if you look up 2.53, right, we look it up, it's 0.9943. And this is the probability Z is greater than 2.53 because it says above. So what does the 99 point, if this is a percent, it's 99.43. What's the 99.43? That's who I'm better than, right? So to find out how many are above, we have to say 1 minus. So when you see above, we have to subtract it from 1. And what is that? 0.57%, right? So I would say 0.57% of students scored, I should say who took the PSAT, but who scored higher than 715 on the, we need to be specific and tell what it is. So we write a sentence, right? So if you scored a 715, that's pretty good. Only 0.57 students scored higher than you. That's tough to do, right? Does that make sense? Yes, sir. So this was the right side. That was above, right? What do you think this is now? We did right, we did left, so we got to do the between. So notice I used the same scores for you, so you didn't have to do the work. How are we going to figure out who's between that one and that one? We want these, right? Yeah, we just subtract them. So what percent was lower than 715? 99.43. And what percent was below 715? So what percent are between 715 and 464, or 464 and 715? Does that make sense? If you want a between, you've got to take the right minus the left. It can't be left minus right because we can't have a negative percent, correct? You're not going to say negative 42%. We don't say that. So how would we, what would we say? We would say 65.71% of students scored between 464 and 715 on the PSAT. Now let's look at what happens if we go backward. So instead of me giving you the Z-score, I gave you the percent. So if I said find the Z-score for 0.0250, what would I do? I'll go to my table. 0.0250, there it is. Now, sometimes you won't find the exact number, you get the closest one. And what is the z-score here? Negative 1.96. So we look up right? So find the probability that z is less than negative 1.96, and that probability is 2.5%. So how would I answer a question about that? I would say negative 1.96 is the z-score for 2.5%, right? So now y'all take a second and you try this one on your own. Okay, what did you get for a z-score? 1.47. So find the probability that z is less than 1.47, and that was 92.92%, right? We looked up. All right, you can write the statement. I'm gonna let you do that. So now, if you can wait, we're about to do above. Y'all, if possible, wait till the end of notes. If you leave, you're missing your notes. So let's try to hold off. Just for a second. What do I do with this one? What do we do here? How do we find this? This is different now. Now we're saying z is greater than. So we want the z-score, and whatever z-score we get, we want 23% of the population to be above that. So what number do we need to look at? Yes. Right? So we need to look up what? Because we want to say, when we say above, it's very important that you recognize this. When we say z is above, we're saying 23% is above z, which means 76.11 is below. And what does your chart look up? Below. Your chart can only look up below. So let's find 0.7611. And what is that z-score? Right, so we need a z-score of 0.71. The probability that z is above 0.71 is 23.89%. One more, let you try that one. So we're going to look up right? When it says the probability that z is above, we want to read to the right. Our chart only reads to the left, so we have to subtract it from 1. So we know we're looking, right? If that makes sense? Well, actually, I should be right there. Right? We want to be above. We want 82% to be above the z line. So what is that z? Does that make sense? Do you understand that? Let's write a note. When z is less than, read table. When z is greater than, right, 1 minus percent, then 3. Okay, so make yourself a note that when you want greater than, you have to subtract it from 1. Why do we have to do that? Because it reads the right side. The last thing we'll do is say, can you figure out the score? So far, we've been giving you a z-score or a percent. But now what if I gave you a problem that said you're in the 60th, 96th percentile? What does that mean? So you are in the 96th percentile. What does that mean? Yes, it means you are better than 96% of the population. Means you're way up there, right? So we could look up, look up. Look up 0.9600 on chart and find the Z. Z equals 1.75. If you are in the 34th percentile, what does that mean? You are better than 34% of population. And what would the z-score be? We would look up. So we look up on the chart. So we're going in here and we're looking up 34. What do you think? Is this good? Is that the closest we can get? Yes, so that's negative 0.41. Is this making sense? Okay, so now we looked up, I want what we're getting out of these two questions is what does this mean? So when someone tells you you're in a percentile, it means you're better than that, not lower than that. You're above that many people. Now, the last thing we need to do, can you look up which score you need to have to meet a requirement? So if your IQ score is 110 and the mean is 100, what is the z-score? Well, this is easy, right? Z is 110 minus 100 over 15.